Hello.
Hi,
We are
everybody.
back again. The Masked Women. It's Alison Ellis back here and
And
Maricela Ehmann. This is our take two, because we had some tech trouble today with our live. And so no big whoop. We're going to record it and post it for you guys later. So if you tuned in and you already saw this, we're doing a retake of it's mask time. It's mask mandate update. As of August 1st, tomorrow, the state of Vermont is mandating mask use in public, right? So here we are to show it. I should give a shout out to Judy from Vermont Wedding Association, who made this lovely, lovely piece I am modeling today. And even though we already did this when we were live for a few minutes, Maricela, I'm going to let you show us your special trick on how we properly take the mask off.
there is a proper way of taking off a mask. So we want to avoid touching the front of it. So it's your fingers, it's this movement. So you tuck it into the strap and you remove it. And in that process, you can then, fold it and stick it inside of a little bag so that you avoid completely touching that area.
Because don't shove it in the bottom of your purse like I do. Put it into a bag. Learn something new every day, and that's what I'm going to do from now on. I'll have a bag for the masks, individual bags for each mask.
Yeah, I have it for my kids, and it's just a Ziploc bag that then I throw away, and I write their names on it.
Easy peasy. All right. So that's how we do. We're doing masks now, guys. We are in the state of Vermont. We have a mask mandate starting August 1st, which is tomorrow, and it's a good thing. We're very happy about this, because Vermont has been doing really well. We have been caring about our community members and caring about ourselves and caring about each other and keeping each other safe. And we want to keep that up. And so Governor Scott announced last Friday that masks will be mandated as of August 1st, which is really a good thing to keep us doing as well as we're doing, keep us on track. So while we're excited about this, we wanted to share just like a recap. We've been doing these safety updates for weeks and weeks now. We want to share a recap of basically what does it look like now that we know for sure that a mask is mandated for your wedding. What does the day look like and what does the flow look like? So let's dive back into it. Take two on what does the event look like now. So our guests know that they're wearing masks, and what does the day look like?
Yeah, they do. They know that they're wearing masks because you have, as a couple, communicated this with them ahead of time via a wedding website or informational insert in your wedding suite, whatever method that you'd like to do that. But as long as they know well ahead of time that they will be wearing masks at the wedding, they should be able to be prepared to do so.
Prepared to follow the rules, right? When we explain the rules, people can follow the rules. No one follows rules that aren't already established in their consciousness, So yeah, we got to make sure we do that. And we love the idea of sending out a beautiful safety card with your invitation suite, right? Like sending out, here are the safety details. You'll be wearing a mask. Here's where, here's when you can take the mask off, what you can expect. Any cross-state travel regulations, you can direct people to that. So I really like the idea of written communication that people can refer back to.
Yes, definitely. And then as well yourself that you've provided everyone with the appropriate information so that they can make the decision on whether to attend or not to. If they don't want to wear a mask, it makes them uncomfortable for the duration of the event or whatever it may be. So you're giving them the option to not show up as well.
Yeah, and that's really important. Like we were invited to a family wedding recently, and they were so understanding about why it would not work for us to come. There was no guilt. There was no, oh, we're so disappointed. It was no hard feelings. We totally understand. And that's the way that people need to be able to approach this. If you are going to do your wedding now during a pandemic, even in a safe state, right, in a really great little safe state like Vermont, We're not a safe little state, right? You really do need to make sure that you're following the rules, make sure that you're keeping people safe. We cannot invite people here who don't want to play by the rules. We cannot do that. And we can't be vendors operating here who don't want to follow the rules, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm in Killington, and they have been really promoting the usage of masks here, and they're using the slogan, open the mountain in the winter, so wear your mask in the summer. So we would love to get out there, and it's a lot of things, as you mentioned it before, there's a lot of cause and effect. If we have major outbreaks in the summer and in the fall, where is our winter going to be? Where are we going to be in the future? So we need to think outside of ourselves and do the right thing.
Which is so hard for us, I know, but we can do it. And Vermont has shown that we can do that, right? So that's why we really need to keep up the good work. Yeah. So I do want to repeat some of the things that we already said in our take one earlier. One of the things was, we're hearing stories, obviously, about couples who are trying to skirt the rules, right? Maybe they're not being completely forthcoming with where people are coming from or what the quarantine situation is. But we also have heard stories of venues or vendors not following the rules. And in fact, I heard a story of a couple who canceled their event at a venue because they heard that the venue was not following the rules. They understood already that the venue wasn't doing everything they could to keep their guests safe. And so they canceled on the venue. Now, these things are going to follow us around, Vermont wedding people, or wherever you might be watching this, wherever you are, wedding person. This is part of your reputation right now. The way you act and conduct yourself, the way you think of others, the way you put people over profit right now will be with you for many years to come, longer than COVID, we hope, right? Again, like I said earlier, even though this is going to magically disappear one day, magically the virus will be gone, somebody told me. Until then, don't act like it's magically gone. Act right. So whether you're a couple, a guest, a vendor, make sure you're doing the right thing to keep people safe.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into the flow. That's where we got cut off before, talking about the flow. Let's talk about arrival, ceremony, cocktail, reception, and give people a little taste of what this looks like.
Absolutely. Something that I didn't touch on previously, which I should have, is your transportation. So if guests are now not transporting themselves to the event on their own, that they would need, and you're hosting some type of transportation, you need to address your schedule so that you have enough time to pick up smaller groups of folks, and that your transportation company has sufficient time to do the cleaning be in between trips. Yep. To do that. But once guests actually show up on site, whether it is a private location or a venue or wherever you're hosting your event, you need to have a clear indication of where they're coming into. Yeah. So that they can find it. And it's very visible at this, entrance.
Safety check-in point kind of thing.
It has to be, it's a safety check-in point, but it also is just, your designated entrance for everyone. So you're streaming everyone in through the same spot. Yeah. That way you can have a check-in for guests. So whether they're being marked off on a list or they're taking their name and their phone number for contact tracing purposes, that needs to be done and have a little area. Something that we touched on before was also marking guests off, knowing who actually showed up and who didn't.
Yep. So who's on the guest list versus who's here in person.
So that we know.
Yep.
So we have that appropriate notation in the case of contact tracing in the future.
Right. And this isn't optional, right? Like we want to make sure whether you're a venue, you're if you're a bed and breakfast, if you're a hotel, if you're a private, party, if you're hosting a private event, you want to follow the rules of having keeping track of anybody who is on your property because you don't want to be the person who's not acting right in a pandemic and putting your community at risk. So we're keeping track of people's names, phone numbers, so that you know who was on site so that you can contact them. And that goes for your guests, of course, but same thing for the employees that are working there. And you can assume that every vendor knows who their employees are and can contact trace them, or you could keep track of everybody who's on site and get the names of everybody, right? So there's people are going to use their discretion a little bit in this, but knowing the intention is that you have the name for 30 days after your event, name and contact number for every person who is on your property.
Yes, absolutely. And once that you're able to check someone in, they go in and sanitize their hands.
Yep. So let's talk about the hand sanitizing station. Go for it.
So a hand sanitizing station is either a hand washing station, which some rental companies do carry, and they're quite convenient. So you can have a full-on hand soap, running water,
yep,
the whole thing, which is probably the best way to do it. But if you're unable to accommodate that, having a sanitizing station is fantastic. Then I encourage venues and planners or anyone else who's hosting to go touchless as much as possible. Like as I mentioned before, I purchased myself some hand sanitizing dispensers, which are most motion sensors, and so you just stick your little hand in there, and you do your thing, and sanitize your hands. Plus, they're cute.
Yeah.
So they have a better appeal than the big jug, and
Sure.
So if you were trying to keep up with the aesthetics aspect of it, then you have options out there.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have signage stating and a garbage can for anyone who wants a tissue or anything like that. Having a napkin or a tissue with that hand sanitizing station is also a very good idea, just in case somebody doesn't want to touch a pump or whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point too. Like having the whole thing be right there and easy to access. So you can, in theory, so we're saying, we know there's things that are the way things are really going to be, and then there's the way things would ideally be. Ideally, you check in, you have someone pump some hand sanitizer into your hand, or you have the touchless.
Yeah.
You have signage indicating where people should go. You have any kind of, your mask, your receptacle, anything you need right there. And of course, you were kind enough to mention maybe a little flower arrangement right next to your hand sanitizing station there. And just so that everyone feels that it's not the illusion of safety, but it's visible safety, right? It's that visible safety measure so people can see it happening. Absolutely. And when you get there and everyone had their hand sanitized and everybody checked in, there's like a level of comfort that you'll have with that. So after we check in, we're moving on to the ceremony site. Is that where we're headed from here?
Yes. So for your ceremony site, it all depends on your seating, but guests are going to be encouraged to wear masks the entire time during your ceremony.
So inside or outside?
Inside or outside. I myself talked to my clients and said, if there is designated seating or little pockets, if people within their own trusted households would like to take off their masks because it's a very hot day, that's them. But that's only in outside ceremony situations, not inside. Inside, it's non-negotiable.
Yep.
So it just really depends on how you approach your seating for your ceremony. If you're going to have 6 feet apart between each single chair, keep people apart, you'll still see people wear masks. And I touched previously on the first recording on, I've been hearing a lot of feedback with couples or brides that don't want the image of that mask in their photographs because they don't want to remember that. But if you're having your wedding in a pandemic, the memory is still there.
Yeah.
It's still there, regardless if you get it in photographs or not.
Yep.
So, it's better to be safe, to wear your masks, coordinate everybody's masks so they all match your color scheme. Do it, but it's just, It's really important. It's really important for the safety, not only of your guests, but also of the vendors that are involved at your events. You don't want the memory of your wedding to be someone got sick because I didn't want the image of the masks.
I mean, can we say that 18 times out loud? Okay, so the picture is not, you don't love the idea of it in the picture, but what's worse is you're having to call people and do the contact tracing because you failed to protect your guests. Yes. We don't want to fail to protect your loved ones, right? Ooh, yes. Ouch. Ooh, that burns, right? Like, we don't want that. We don't want to not protect the people that I've trusted you to host them. So anybody who takes that leap of faith to come to your wedding during a pandemic deserves your utmost safety attention, right? Because all of these measures that we talk about, and we've been doing this for weeks, talking about all these things, they're not going to guarantee you won't get COVID at an event. There's no 100%, right? The only thing we can do is mitigate, reduce the chances of contaminating people. And that's it. That's all we can do. We would be lying if we said, if you follow our safety guidelines, you will have a safe event, right? That's not what we're saying. We're saying you got to follow the state mandates at a minimum. You got to go above and beyond them in certain cases, right? Like before masks were mandated, you and I were sitting here saying, you should wear a mask. So whether, and that's why we're glad they're mandated now. So we're not just saying you should because we think you should. It's mandated. It's really, these are the things that are going to keep people safe, following the rules and then going above and beyond them when needed.
Absolutely.
So we have our ceremony where people are seated with their family, socially distanced in between family pods. Is that what we're calling them?
Pods. Pods. Term for it. So in between your family pods, and widen your aisle so that your bride and groom, your wedding party, if they wanted to walk down the aisle without a mask on, it would be more acceptable. I'm not saying that it is, but more acceptable if you're keeping the distance.
Right. Keeping people away.
Something that I discussed with the labor department was to have about 16 feet between, or a 16-foot wide aisle to try to provide that buffer, that extra protection.
Okay. So a wide aisle.
Wide. Sure. Wide aisle, which is perfectly fine. You're really in the spotlight there when you're coming down.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then if people want to like lean over and take pictures, the photographer won't even get them in the picture. Still have that clear shot. So as far as the couple goes, we've got our couple and we've got our officiant. Yeah. And we're going to have 6 feet between that front row of guests and the couple, and then 6 feet between the couple and the officiant. And I know the question is, do the couples have to wear masks during the ceremony, right? That's what everyone wants to know. Do we have to wear a mask? And I think we have the answer of, this isn't necessarily a law or a mandate. This is where we use our discretion, right? So if you are part of a household, if you are about to get married, if you are about to kiss each other, maybe you could not have a mask on for that time.
And but you do see, officials, even health officials, when they're speaking into a microphone, they remove their masks because they're away from other people. So it's just about creating that distance so that you're able to remove your masks or not have the masks on as a couple and be able to go through your vows and everything.
Right. And probably one extra step would be like checking with your officiant about their comfort level on you removing your mask. And again, we're talking about outside. If you are getting married inside, yes, you will be wearing your mask, right? We can assume that. For after the ceremony, right? So we recession down the aisle, hopefully in an orderly fashion where there's still social distance, right? And now we go to our new improved or our new different cocktail hour. So what does that look like?
Cocktail hours need to be fully addressed and restructured to be able to meet with state regulations. Currently, you're not allowed to stand at a bar and consume any of those kind of things. And communal food is not allowed. Past trays, buffets, cheese stations, those kind of things are not an option. They have to be removed, and you have to come up with a different way.
What would the different way be? Like, we would be handing them, I know you've got lots of ideas on this.
Yeah. So something that we're planning for a wedding that we have coming up is doing food stations, but food and drink pairings. And for example, one of the food stations is going to be like a Shake Shack theme, where you're going to have a slider and some fries and a prepackaged covered little bundle. And then you get a beer that's associated with it, a nice little VT craft beer. You do the thing, they pick up their items, and then they go and they sit down and they're able to remove their masks and consume them.
Perfect.
And then go a couple of other different themed stations, the same, so that then they have options, but everything's going to be prepackaged.
So like, people can even walk up to cocktail hour and even be handed something as soon as they leave. Here's something for you. They can be directed, to a lot of people are talking about, you're the first person I heard say, well, we could do these picnic style things, right? So you can have a blanket if people want to sit on the ground, or you have a table, where there's plenty of space where people can sit and consume the special goodies that are like this new surprise, right? I remember talking to Kim from the Round Barn about, like, they could have a little picnic basket and they open it up and there's these special things inside, and it's like they get a special present instead of, let's say, as much as I love a cocktail hour at a wedding, excuse me, most of the time I'm sort of like, I'm scoping out where should I stand to get that tray when it comes around, right? Like, we do this, we're pros, we know how to do it. You're like, oh, the kitchen's over there, I'm going to stand that way, because you're sort of plotting how you're going to get your in. Mm-hmm. And this sort of takes any of that away. It's like, here's your thing, here's your portion, here's your special package that we've made for you.
Bag. An adult goodie bag with a cocktail in it.
It's like a goodie bag you don't have to wait till the end of the party for. And yeah, like, if I walked into a cocktail hour, because I really like the way you put it, like, we need to fully address it and restructure it. Like, just, that's it. We need to fully address it and restructure it, because we know for a fact that when people are consuming a lot of alcohol, they're not able to follow the social distancing rules. It's just like our brains aren't tuned in, or they're not able to be like, 6 feet looks like 3 feet, looks like 18 inches all of a sudden, right? Are we 6 feet apart? You look beautiful. We need to really restructure how we're doing these things. And so if people walk in to your ceremony, your reception tent, and they get handed something special and their own special drink, that's not a downgrade from the way that the cocktail hour. Yeah. Like, it's fast service.
It's an added experience for your guests. Mm-hmm. And it's, again, letting them know that you are considerate of them being there, taking the time, the effort, and literally the risk to come and join you on your day. And this is kind of like an extra little present that you're giving them. Whether it is that like we're saying, like several food stations, or just like a prepackaged like hors d'oeuvre picnic basket. I've also seen different little pockets of seating where people that are designated ahead of time. You go find your name, your little pocket of seats, or your little lounge area. You sit there, and then you have a waiter bring you a special tray that's for your group, for your table, your own drinks, your own food, your own items. And that way, you know that that's dedicated just to you. Obviously, the scope of it depends on your budget, what you're able to do. But now that guest counts are being reduced compared to maybe original plans, you can reallocate that budget into, throwing a few extra things here and there.
Yeah, so the people who do come, even though there's fewer people, get an experience that's elevated. They get a higher quality of whether it's the drink you're serving or the food you're serving or the service, the way it's getting served, right? Because you could have fewer people, but still need the same number of servers to keep things going in the right way. You can absolutely turn this into a special experience for your guests. And that's the thing that I say all the time. And I know I said this in a previous broadcast when we did a safety update. To me, a successful wedding is when your guests feel hosted, when they feel thought about, when your guests feel like you care about them and you're not just throwing some big party. And it's just, I've been to some pretty fancy, I was at one of the fanciest wedding I've ever been to. It was over the top. It was amazing. But I did feel cared for, right? But there was a lack of personalization to it. It was very, very fancy, but there was a lack of personalization. So we can turn this into being slightly more fancy because people get that drink handed to them instead of waiting online, right? You're no longer waiting online. You got it. It's right here. That's service. People will feel thought about. And that's when you have a successful event. When people don't know the rules, don't know what's going on, feel lost. People go, what's next? Where do we go from here? That's when you maybe haven't done your best to make them feel hosted. So those are things that we can do. And the cocktail hour is an easy way to, like you said, elevate the experience. So I like it.
Keep it to an hour. You don't want to extend it beyond that.
Right. Because we don't want people, first of all, to be getting bored because there's less cross flow, right? We want people to kind of stick with where they are. It's just not going to be quite as mingly, right? That's just how it's going to be. It's got to be less mingly. Should we go into anything else about cocktail hour? Should we go into the dining experience?
Remember to have hand sanitizing stations near there as well. You can move it if you want to reduce the amount that you have, but you can always move it from one location to another. Sanitizing the hand sanitizing station when you do so, but this is one extra step that you can do during this ceremony. During the ceremony is to set up that station there so that if guests arrive to that area, they're able to do that again.
Perfect. So cocktail hour having that ability to sanitize again. When we do the reception, so this is, I feel like, straightforward for us because we've talked about it a bunch of times, but for anybody who hasn't already heard our deal, for our reception, right, we need a bigger tent. Like we're going to need a bigger boat. We're going to need a bigger tent because we can't have 150 people under the normal size 150 person tent because we need a lot more space. So we have to think about how much bigger our tent needs to be and our rain plan, because we can't have a plan to have 100-person wedding outside under a tent, but when it rains and you go indoors, you can only have 75 people. And now you've got 25 people where you're like, what is it, like musical chairs? And it's like whoever gets in first and the rest of you are outside, like, sorry. We got to really think, again, your guests have to feel thought about. They don't feel thought about if they're standing in the rain because you can't put them in the barn legally or whatever the indoor venue may be.
We've decided to just go ahead and limit our events to 75 people.
I think that's so smart.
Yeah. And then that way, you're taking that, that little item out and you're not worried too much about it. So you're able to address things like a rain plan and whatnot. In case that were to happen. It doesn't rain at my weddings. No, just
of course, never. And it's funny because we know about the rain plan. We always make a plan B. I always say you got to embrace your plan B because if it's soaking wet rain on your wedding day, you're not allowed to be disappointed, right? You got to move forward. And so if you're going to move forward during a COVID pandemic, right, you're not allowed to be disappointed that you have to wear a mask, that you have to social distance, right? You're choosing this now and you need to move forward in a conscious way, right? Where you're really like, this is what it's going to be. And I am okay with that. I am willing to do this,
Embrace it and make it beautiful.
Yeah. Embrace it and make it beautiful. I love it. So our tent is bigger. Our indoor backup plan, our venue for 75 people. Like, I really think I'm willing to just say we should just have weddings of 75 people at this point, right? Just like you decided for your business. That would be the smartest thing for people to decide, to not try to get 100 and then not have any backup plan, right? Just do the 75 because that's the max you can have inside. Again, it has to be that your venue can accommodate 150 or something if you can have 75. So there's a bunch of cylinders firing at once here. You need to know what the indoor capacity is normally, and you can't exceed 50% of that. And the max is 75. So if you're getting married someplace like the Old Lantern, that I think can fit 200 people, no brainer, you can definitely have 75 people inside there, right? So that's the way you want to think about how you're planning your numbers. It's not just 75. If your venue can only accommodate 125, 75 is still going to be more people than they're allowed to have indoors.
And other factors that you need to take.
How good I was at that math, by the way. I was like, 125. Sorry.
Other factors that you need to take into consideration when working out how many guests you can actually hold is that even before you get your RSVPs, you have to think of your table layout and the spacing between the table layouts. Because even if your venue or your tent can hold 75 theoretically, once you have that 6 feet plus in between tables, I suggest 10 feet and really strongly suggest 10 feet so that you accommodate for people pulling their chairs out and for your wait staff to feel safe going through the table layout there. But when your guests are RSVPing, request that they give you information on not only transportation and how they feel comfortable having that, but also in how they want to be seated. Are they comfortable sitting with other people, or would they like a table on their own? This is where you're going to start seeing smaller groupings of tables. So if you're sitting, 5 or 6 couples on their own, you're going to need tables for 2, and then maybe a few families, tables for 4 or 6, and other people who maybe have been in pods together or have traveled together, or been staying quarantining for the last 2 weeks. In the same house, then they can sit in the larger tables and so on. So now you have long tables, medium-sized tables, and short tables, and
right.
You have to take into account your table layout for that. So maybe your tent could accommodate 75 people, but now with your seating arrangement, you're down to 48. So look at that. Look at that extensively ahead of time.
Yeah. So that's not a small detail at all. Part of that communication, right? We send out what the rules are going to be, what the safety guidelines are. We allow people to opt out, and we invite them. We're like, we are totally understanding if you don't want to do this, right? To let them off the hook easy. But then invite their information, their feedback. Who are you comfortable sitting with, right? So that they can let you know how you can help them feel safe. So you might have a lot of those 2-person tables, and you might have a few 6 tops, and you might have a couple of longer tables with maybe you have 2 families commingling that, you've got your sister and your brother and their families are together, something like that. But we do want to be really mindful that it takes more space. And that 10 feet recommendation, again, from you is really kind of critical, because even as I sit here at this desk, right, the amount that I am out from the desk, right, and if there's somebody behind me and they're sticking out from their table, you've reduced that 6 feet potentially to 4 feet, right, or even less potentially, depending on how much people like to stretch back from the table.
It's very common, at least from my experience in events, that if you only keep the 6 feet between tables, when the chairs are pulled out, you're going to have about 1 foot to 1.5 feet in between tables at that point.
So you won't be able to move.
Chairs, because people do move. They sit back, they pull back, especially as maybe wine service has gone through a few times.
And so, it's that thinking about what's the rule, right? So 6 feet versus what's in practicality going to happen. And in practicality, you're going to have people pushed away from the table and servers trying to walk through there? And how close do you want to make the servers have to get to your guests, and vice versa, right? So all of these things are important to consider. So if we've got our tent or our indoor space, we're spaced out, our table layout, it's going to be more complicated, right? Like we're not pretending that it's going to be no big deal. It's going to be a little trickier. But then again, seating charts, as far as I know, are always tricky. I always hear they're one of the hardest things for people to do. And this can really help you avoid people who might have hard feelings that they're not sitting with this person or that person. Sorry, you couldn't. You got to sit all by yourself over there. Like sorry, Uncle George. No, it's not that you offend us with your jokes. It's you weren't in a pod. You weren't in a safe pod. That's all. So it could, in some ways, also give you that buffer, make it almost a no-brainer of how to seat people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So dinner is served. There's no buffet. We already covered that. And then the big question, dancing, right? That's what everyone wants to know about. How do we safely socially distance and dance? It seems pretty obvious to me that that doesn't really fully exist. And so you can get creative here. You can figure out what you want to do. Do you want it? We've talked about, people saying, well, they can dance at tables. They can dance outside. You can draw circles on the ground of where people can be. But if we're just, being heart-centered about what's smart, what's feasible, what makes sense, we know there are some states where you're not allowed to have singers, right? You can't even sing because you could potentially be spreading COVID through your vocal projections, right? If that's not okay, then should you be dancing close to people? Do you want to dance with a mask? Do you think your guests are going to have drinks and then wear a mask and socially distance while they're dancing? Or do you know better, right? Or do you know that they won't probably do that? So how much risk do you want to take is what the dancing thing is, I think, at this point. It's not against the rules in Vermont yet to do that. I don't know if it will be at some point. But let's be really smart and really clear about why that is a problem. And it is because you're going to be breathing on each other. You're not going to be social distancing. And by the way, it's the thing that your photographer is the most scared of, right? The photographers are the most scared about, and I don't want to make it sound negative by saying they're scared, but it's factual and true that that's how they're feeling. They're feeling really uneasy and scared about, 150 people. Again, we're saying you should probably cap it at 75. But if you can technically have 150 people getting on a dance floor, that's not safe for your photographer. That's not safe for the people who are tending to your wedding. So what are your thoughts on this?
It's really difficult. For myself personally, I would avoid a dance floor. I would not get on a dance floor unless it was me by myself.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with, continuing on with your special dances, your first dance. It's typically two people on the dance floor on their own.
Yep.
The way that I'm addressing or I'm suggesting and providing suggestions for couples is to put a cap on how many people can actually be at the dance floor at any one time. And I would be myself, and the DJ or band would be kind of keeping an eye on that factor. For a bride, if she, came in with her bridesmaids and, they've been in the same house for a week or several days prior to the wedding date, and they're all been together and they want to go on that dance floor and dance to their favorite song, I'm not going to say no. You should all be wearing masks. That is a given.
Yeah.
But definitely, making it airy, having good airflow, and keep doing things to keep that space between them. It would be great. It's going to be difficult. If you don't want to put forth the effort and have that person to kind of monitor the dance floor the entire time, and you're not looking for that, and you're not looking to wear masks while you're dancing, then, you know, that's a consideration that you need to take on whether or not you want to have it. You know, so far, at least for one of the weddings, the dance floor is in its own space. It is not in the dinner tent. It is, you know, it's
That's a good idea.
its own space. And it is going to be limited on the amount of people that can be on there, and they're all going to be wearing masks if you want to be on the dance floor.
I almost feel like this could be like a great opportunity for people to, like, you really bring back, like, you're just dance competition. You're just like getting that, you know, you're just like, everybody's got their spotlight moment. That's it. It's just nonstop spotlight moments, one person after the other. I like the idea of it being in a different space. I think that seems like, you know, something that's reasonable, because again, you want to consider all of your guests' comfort level. And so if you've got everyone knows there are some people who dance and some people who don't. Mm-hmm. And so if there's people dancing and doing things that maybe aren't following mandates and social distancing, and then here you are like witnessing all this in the tent, you might feel uncomfortable. Whereas if you at least have your safe space where you can be, and people who do want to dance can be in a different space, that helps, again, hosting your guests by seeing them, right? Making them feel like you care about them and making them feel safe. And the idea that you're going to dance with a mask, you know, just make that really clear. If you're on the dance floor, you're wearing a mask. So we're not dancing with a glass of wine anymore, right? Because now we're dancing and we're lifting our mask. It's all too much. You know, we can't have people multitasking on all these different levels. We've got to, you know, we dance when we dance, we eat when we eat, we mask when we mask, you know, we have, we have all these things figured out.
Yeah.
Anything else about the reception, or just anything else about finishing out this day?
Just, you know, even at that point where people may be dancing, maybe a post-dinner intermingling, or, you know, any celebration that happens after the dinner, creating small pockets of space or spaces, lounges, seating, or tables in other areas where people can kind of pull away. Yeah. If somebody wanted to go with their date for the wedding and wanted to go sit by a fire pit and remove their masks and have a cocktail and kind of just sit and relax and take a break, you know, be conscious of that, set up little spaces like that so that people are able to do that.
Yep. All right. There's one thing we haven't talked about, and this is not super sexy, but the part of your infectious disease preparedness and response plan. Is anybody clapping that I just got that all out, like, without messing up? Thank you. Part of that, so that's as wedding vendors, if you're a Vermont wedding vendor, right, you should have a plan, your safety plan of what's required for you when you're setting up, when you're working with guests, when you're working with other vendors. What do you need? What do your employees need to be safe, right? So every business should have their own plan in writing, not like in your noodle. You're not like, you know what, I know it. I got the plan. Put it out there in writing, communicate it with your clients ahead of time. And again, like, this isn't the super sexy part, but part of your plan, because I have read it many times, is that response piece. What if somebody is COVID positive? What if somebody does show signs? How do we address that at an event? I'm sorry to put you on the spot like this with that question, but I know you've thought about it.
You do need a plan in the case. So it's an isolation plan in case if someone became sick or is sick or shows signs at an event. And this, you know, showing signs, they might have not shown signs at the beginning of the event when they arrived, but maybe they're showing signs later on. And so you need to have a plan for that, selecting a space or an area where this person can be removed and addressed, having extra masks so that this person can then put on a surgical mask or a better fitting mask, and requesting them to leave, seek medical attention. If it is an employee or someone who's showing extensive signs or having difficulty breathing, getting them the appropriate health assistance at that point, whether or not you're calling your health department or your local ER at that point, to just make sure that you're treating them appropriately and you're getting the right help for them. But it needs to be discussed what happens with everyone else at that point.
Right.
So whether this was in the beginning, middle, or towards the end of the event, that event should be terminated immediately upon finding someone who is ill. It is very important. You're going to protect the rest of the people who are present. You're going to protect your vendors and everyone else and people in the community at that point. I know it seems terrible, but to, cancel a wedding maybe right after ceremony or even before the ceremony, but it is a social responsibility that you have taken on by deciding to move forward with your event. And you need to be conscious of that. And no, it wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't be fun. You need to think about everyone else outside of you at that point.
Yeah. So like, this is the new plan B, right? The new rain plan is, what's your somebody shows up and they have symptoms plan, right? It's, again, not super sexy, but super necessary for people to talk about. And who's really talking about this? It should be the venue, the safety coordinator, right? It should be anybody who has employees. What if, like you said, if one of your employees is showing the signs, how do you address it? Everyone has to be super clear that this is really serious stuff, because the risk is death, right? We like to be positive, and we're talking about how you can elevate your cocktail hour and make this an amazing event. But let us not forget to remind you that the risk is death. So, and extreme contamination, right, throughout your event. If you've got people on a dance floor who had a few too many drinks, who are not wearing masks and are breathing all over each other, and one of those people is an asymptomatic carrier of COVID, boy, oh boy, did you make a big mistake. Boy, oh boy. And people, the consequences will be felt by others, right? So you really want to have that social responsibility. For weeks and weeks now, before Governor Scott came out with our mask mandate, people said, well, who's going to enforce this, right? People still say that. Who's going to enforce? Who's going to enforce? And I just want to remind all the vendors, all the couples, it's us. It's us who are going to enforce. Why does Vermont have so few cases? Because of us, because of Vermonters, because of the way we showed up and we did the right thing. And so let's keep doing that. Don't lose sight of it because you've never had to be that strict with a client before, or you've never been to a wedding where there wasn't dancing, and so you're not going to not have dancing, or you don't want to wear masks, and so you're going to tell people you're going to wear masks, but then when you get there, you're going to tell everybody not to wear masks, right? We have to be really, really clear about what we're doing. What are we doing here? Are you hosting a party, or are you creating a problem?
Yeah.
And let's just keep everybody safe. So keeping our numbers lower in terms of how many people attend events is a really important thing. The social distance, following the rules, and not having to be regulated, but knowing that you need to regulate yourself, right? You need to be able to self-regulate. And alcohol, too much alcohol, is always going to make it harder for people to self-regulate. So longer events with lots of drinking are inherently going to be more dangerous for your guests and your staff and yourselves than slightly shorter events with smaller number of people, with social distancing, and with reasonable, moderate drinking, right?
Absolutely.
Being responsible.
Nobody wants to be that sloppy guest anyway. So you don't want to be remembered as that person.
You don't.
Even as couples or wedding party, you still want to remember that good time yourself and, kind of hold yourself to a higher standard while you're celebrating.
Yeah.
You can have a few cocktails. That's fine. It's not a big deal. But, just keep that good face forward.
Yep. And remember, at the end of the day, it is always about the marriage, not the party. While we love the party, like that is the part we love the most. We're not going to lie, right? We're happy that you got married, but we love the part. I'm the florist. I love decorating. I love making the flowers. I love when I bring the bride her bouquet and she cries a little bit. You know, I'll secretly get charged from that. But it's about your marriage more than the bouquet or, you know, what an awesome like hand sanitizing station we set up for you, right? It's the fact that you're going to be married at the end of the day. So if you don't want to do all these things, get married anyway, right? Go get married and then do this party later. Do this party at a time where it's safer. And also not super sexy to say, but I'm going to do it because I'm like, we're jamming it all into this. This is like our little bundle. All the things we've talked about in all our other videos are kind of right here. 2021 is going to be unpredictable as well, y'all. So what we're saying here on July 31st, 2020 right now is very likely going to be true all the way through 2021. So you should just plan that and like, let's hope that I'm wrong and that's not the way it's going to be in 2021. I'd be glad. I'll volunteer to be wrong about that prediction, but it doesn't make sense to me to plan for 2021 like it was 2019. We have to plan with what we know now. Plan with the facts that we have now.
Plan in the now.
Plan in the now. All right. With plan in the now, I literally think we have done every single little thing that we have talked about in our last 5 or 6 videos. So I'm feeling really good about this recap here. Is there anything else you want to throw out there before we tell people to celebrate safe or postpone feeling confident at this point that they're making the right decision because they're not willing to follow the rules?
Well, no, just exactly what you said. Do what feels good for you as well. You know, what's good for your heart, what's good for the community. Go forth with that. Don't be selfish.
Don't be selfish. I think that's the perfect way to end this. Like, click out, don't be selfish, boom. It's true. And it's really, really hard because I think when I was planning my wedding, you know, it was 17 years ago, pre-Pinterest, right? Pre-Google. I remember when we were planning, our caterer had a website and I was like, Dave, you got to come see this. The caterer has a website. I mean, that's how old I am. It was like a big deal that the caterer had a website. It was a very selfish time. All I did was think about planning that wedding. I was so excited to plan the wedding that when the wedding was finally over, I felt a real sense of relief. Whew, like a weight off my shoulder, like, wow, today is the first day I'm not planning my wedding in a year or whatever it was. And it was a real sense of relief. So it's hard to not be selfish at a time where all you're doing is thinking about this day and what it's going to be like and having your friends there. So our heart is with you, right? Our hearts are with you on these hard decisions you have to make. We are not telling you this stuff to say like, and it's just so easy, right?
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. There's a lot more that, you know, old school wedding binder with all the notes and all the things that you needed to take care of. We've added a whole extra checklist of items that you need to go through ahead of time or during your planning that bring you outside of yourself, and you're really conscious about the way that your guests are traveling, where they're staying, how they're moving around. There's a lot more. There's significant more moving parts to this, and it's not easy. And for those of you who decide to move forward with your events, you know, find the appropriate support, talk to all of your vendors, be in constant communication. And, you know, if you do decide to move forward, I know you can do so, just be conscious.
Yeah. Don't be selfish, be conscious. You're like dropping all the Zen, like, this is it. This is just forever. This is not just for COVID. This is in life. These are life lessons. Don't be selfish, be conscious. I like it. All right. I think we can end it there with the one last piece that will absolutely be the cherry on top, we want to go to accd.vermont.gov if you need any actual updates or on guidelines and mandates. Cross-state travel restrictions are there. Mm-hmm. The wedding guidelines, the restaurant and catering guidelines, so any lodging guidelines, anything that you need to know about your Vermont wedding and what's allowed, right? So, and again, what's allowed versus what you should do, not always the same, just saying that one more time. But accd.vermont.gov is where you're going to find all that stuff if you're having a Vermont wedding. And you should go to ehmannevents.com and check out her COVID resources, especially if you are a vendor. You will find her infectious disease preparedness and response plan. I said it twice perfectly, by the way. And if you are a couple, head over there because she's got a quiz for you to take about should you proceed or should you postpone. So there are lots of resources at ehmannevents.com. So you want to make sure you check that out. And I'll make sure to put a link with this video so people can find both of those websites.
Beautiful.
And we have done it all. We have done it. That's a wrap. I'm so glad we did a retake because I think this was better than our live stream was going to be. So, thank you, tech gods, for screwing me up earlier. And I can't thank you enough, Maricela. Truly, 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 like you have been a gift in my life since this COVID thing started, because I would never have been able to come up with a plan for my own business without like using your plan and hearing your the way you take this so seriously and also understand what the client needs. I think it's just a true blessing to us here in this industry. So, and to me personally.
Appreciate that.
Well, I mean it. I mean it from my toes. All right, we're gonna end it here, and we'll see you in the next safety update whenever there's a need to update this. I feel like we did a good update here, and happy planning, celebrate safe, and don't be selfish, be conscious. Bye-bye.